On the docks of Simonstown, a quieter corner compared to the bustling V&A Waterfront, local fishermen repaired their nets, unaware of the global tempest converging just offshore. International criminal syndicates from opposite corners of the globe were forging alliances here. Rumor had it that the Bulgarian mafia had partnered with Colombia's most feared cartel to bring in a container of cocaine worth hundreds of millions of rand. Cape Town's sprawling suburbs were used to street gang warfare. But few imagined that such high-stakes deals would unfold in the serenity of this coastal town. Still, signs were emerging. An uptick in stashed vessels, covert maritime movements under night's cover, and fierce shootouts in bayside areas. Struggling with a recent bust that sent 3 henchmen to prison, the Bulgarians needed a new route to funnel drugs through South Africa. They had tested clandestine shipments at Saldanha Bay before, using fishing boats to hide contraband in concealed compartments, until authorities discovered thousands of bricks of cocaine, a haul worth $500 million. Meanwhile, the Colombian Cartel, never short on product, sought fresh pathways outside over-policed Atlantic routes. They found a match in South Africa's vast shoreline and in local gangs eager to do the dangerous work for a share of the spoils. Among Cape Town's 28 gang factions, Peter "Pet" Jaggers led the Terrible Jers. Known for their brazen extortion and smuggling, they had carved out a fearsome reputation. Over time, Jaggers forged bonds beyond local criminal circles, earning the trust of Serbians and Bulgarians seeking new opportunities. For him, orchestrating a massive transatlantic coke shipment promised a lucrative payday. The plan on paper was straightforward. The Colombians would drop a sealed container at sea off Simonstown, providing GPS coordinates. Jaggers' crew would retrieve the haul under cover of darkness, then hand it over to the Bulgarians for distribution. Each party stood to make millions. Late one Sunday in March, 6 men quietly departed the Simonstown harbour in a small rubber duck. At first light, a distress call emanated from the same area. A group of fishermen had run out of fuel roughly 80 nautical miles from shore. Authorities soon rescued them, their official story being nothing more than a bungled fishing trip. Ironically, whispers within the Terrible Jers suggested this was only a distraction, so a second boat could discreetly retrieve the real payload. Depending on who you believed, the container was either lost to bad weather or successfully smuggled to another buyer. In high-stakes trafficking, half-truths circulate faster than real facts. Across the Atlantic, Colombian phone lines buzzed with anger. Their Bulgarian collaborators insisted the package had vanished, suspecting Jaggers of a double cross. Did he keep the dope to sell elsewhere? Tensions spiked as each syndicate grew convinced betrayals lurked behind every excuse. Suddenly, the most pressing question was how to track down the man at the center of it all. By June, Underworld chatter in Cape Town confirmed that the Colombians and Bulgarians wanted answers and blood. Jaggers, maintaining a low profile in Bishop Lavis, accepted an invitation to Johannesburg to clear the air, bringing his close associate, William Peterson. Arriving late at OR Tambo International Airport, the pair checked into a suite at Emperor's Palace. On the surface, it seemed like a diplomatic meeting. However, once Jaggers and Peterson entered a waiting car that night, the trap closed around them. A Colombian man flashed a gun, his calm stare revealing he had traveled across continents for this showdown. Within days, Jaggers' wife filed a missing person report, mentioning that foreign men from Bulgaria or Serbia had taken him. Soon afterward, Chilling WhatsApp voice notes implying her husband was en route to South America left her distraught. The Colombians demanded either the missing shipment or a 50 million rand ransom. Weeks turned into months with no word, until October, when police discovered 2 weighted-down bodies in a Free State river. Both were nearly unrecognizable, but authorities confirmed they belonged to Jaggers and Peterson. Bound with chains, they were testament to the brutality lurking beneath the waves of international drug trafficking. Of course, Cape Town's underworld would not stop for 2 dead men. The Terrible Jers found a new leader. The Bulgarians regrouped, and the Colombian pipelines continued funneling product. But for anyone who might be tempted by the allure of a R1 billion deal, Jaggers' downfall was a cautionary tale. In these waters, betrayal is never forgiven and rarely forgotten. When Peter Pet Jaggers failed to phone home the next morning, his wife Charles became alarmed. By July 5th, she arrived at the Bishop Lavis police station to file a missing person report, explaining how foreigners, apparently Bulgarian and Serbian, had whisked her husband from OR Tambo International Airport to an unknown destination. At first, authorities didn't register the full gravity, but kidnappings linked to overseas cartels triggered alarm bells in specialized units. Days later, Charles received a WhatsApp message from a South American number. Heart pounding, she pressed play on a voice note. In heavily accented English, a man stated that Jaggers was heading to Colombia. Unless the missing consignment of cocaine was recovered or 50 million rand paid, she'd never see him again. Panicked, she replied, pleading ignorance about any stolen drugs. Members of the Terrible Jers tried haggling in secrecy, suggesting smaller sums or alternate deals. Each offer was met with cold hostility. "Now it's too late for your boss," the final message said, before the line went dead. The entire 28th Gang subculture trembled. While fierce rivalries existed among groups like the Terrible Jers, the Firm, or the Rude Boys, few wanted the wrath of the Colombian Cartel descending on Cape Town. If the Terrible Jers had stolen shipments intended for both the Bulgarians and Colombians, every 28 faction might suffer. Soon, new rumors circulated. Another man who'd introduced Jaggers to Bulgarian contacts had gone into hiding, with talk that his wife and child were abducted. Despite the swirl of accusations, police found little concrete evidence. The city's mainstream media said little. Tourists continued enjoying the beaches, families struggled with daily challenges, and the underworld drama remained in the shadows. By mid-July, Bishop Lavis endured a spate of drive-by shootings, bullets tearing through fences without causing immediate casualties. Locals debated whether the attackers were Bulgarian guns for hire or opportunistic gangs prying at the Terrible Jers' weakened defenses. Some of Jaggers' associates argued they needed to pool resources, perhaps pay part of the demanded 50 million to buy his freedom. Others claimed Jaggers had orchestrated the entire fiasco alone, implicating the Terrible Jers without their input. Accusations flew, trust eroded, and the leadership vacuum grew as days without Jaggers turned into weeks. Meanwhile, the enraged Colombian syndicate sent threats to Terrible Jers' foot soldiers and relatives alike. "If we don't get what's ours, you will all pay." The Hawks, South Africa's elite investigative division, scrambled to follow digital clues, from Emperor's Palace hotel reservations to suspicious calls. Yet, every lead disappeared behind burner phones and distant international numbers. Corruption within local enforcement added another layer of difficulty, and fear stifled potential informants. 3 months slipped by with no trace of Jaggers or William Peterson, his trusted associate who'd traveled with him to Johannesburg. On October 11th, 2024, A fisherman near the Vaal River in the Free State noticed shapes bobbing in the current. Police divers found 2 bodies wrapped in chains and weighed down by makeshift sandbags. Their advanced state of decomposition hinted at a grim fate long sealed, yet an identification process confirmed everyone's worst suspicions. The remains were those of Jaggers and Peterson. When the news returned to Cape Town, hardened gang veterans shook their heads knowingly. Some feigned surprise, but most recognized the trademark of Colombian retribution. Whispers circulated amid the 28 networks. He messed with brutal people. Those who had once admired Jaggers' daring plans to bridge Bulgarian and Colombian interests now saw the devastating result of crossing international syndicates. His funeral drew a subdued crowd. Family members, cautious friends, and curious neighbors, all aware how lethal these alliances can become. Meanwhile, the Terrible Jers scrambled for new leadership, with a mid-level figure named Gideon attempting to rally support. He reached out to rival cliques, hoping to forge temporary pacts and avert any fresh bloodshed. Yet no real peace was guaranteed in a corner of Cape Town where alliances shift as quickly as allegiances are bought and sold. Rumors abounded that the missing stash of cocaine had indeed been resold. If so, the proceeds were unlikely to surface now that Jaggers was gone, scattered into offshore accounts or divided among unknown partners. In response, the Hawks vowed a determined probe, dissecting flight manifests and tracking whispers of Bulgarian or Serbian operatives. Still, high-level foreign criminals rarely operate in the daylight, and local communities were left bracing for the violence that might follow. Word spread quickly through Cape Town's underbelly after Peter "Pet" Jaggers was found chained and submerged in a Free State river. In Bishop Lavis, Mannenberg, and Valhalla Park, neighborhoods already steeped in gang violence, rumors galloped from one street corner to the next. If Jaggers, the Terrible Jers' formidable leader, could be disposed of so cruelly, then no one was out of reach. It was a grim reminder that the city harbored more than just local street disputes. It was now a key node on a global map of narcotics, bribes, and silent threats. New tension laced the air. Gideon, a mid-level enforcer, had stepped into the leadership vacuum left by Jaggers, trying to cement his authority among Terrible Jers' foot soldiers and uneasy lieutenants. The Rude Boys, historically at odds with the Terrible Jers, began amassing in outlying blocks near Valhalla Park. The firm, another 28 affiliates under Ralph Stanfield, eyed the uncertain future of the Terrible Jers. Perhaps they too could seize territory by exploiting the power shift. In hidden corners of Cape Flats, murmurs focused less on local squabbles and more on the foreign presence that had orchestrated Jaggers' demise. The Bulgarian mafia, wounded by the lost cocaine shipment, remained insistent on what they saw as overdue compensation. Meanwhile, the Colombian Cartel had proven its lethality. Whispers of South American vengeance flitted through gambling dens and makeshift bars. Every small-time gangster wondered if more bodies would appear weighted down in quiet wetlands, each a testament to betrayal repaid tenfold. Neutral dock workers at Kalk Bay and Simonstown kept their mouths shut when they saw unfamiliar faces. Some with distinct Slavic accents, others mumbling Spanish under their breath, examining vessels late into the night. These watchers took notes about hulls, compartments, and potential maritime routes. The talk among long-time fishermen was that the foreigners were scouting for another big drop, possibly with a new local partner who hadn't burned them like Jaggers had. Everyone agreed on one thing. If a new deal came together, it would be orchestrated with more ruthlessness and caution than ever before. In a modest apartment in Bishop Lavis, Jaggers tried to maintain a semblance of normalcy for her children. She avoided public gatherings and refrained from answering unknown calls. Although certain Terrible Jers veterans pledged protection, she never shook the feeling that vengeance could reach her doorstep. The Colombian Cartel, after all, had proven its global reach by abducting and dispatching her husband. But local criminals, too, could harbor grudges, especially if they blamed her for not helping them retrieve the ill-fated consignment or pay the demanded ransom. Police scrutiny intensified, but corruption and fear plagued the case. High-ranking Hawks investigators pressed local shelters for leads, anonymous tips, sightings of suspicious foreigners, yet those who might speak up feared retribution far more than they trusted the authorities. A pattern emerged. The deeper the Hawks dug, the more obstacles they faced. Allegations floated that some insiders tipped off suspects in exchange for a cut of drug profits. Others, involved in the shipping lanes, simply vanished under ominous circumstances. While Gideon strove to reassure the Terrible Jers of his competence, he also sought a solution for the lingering Colombian threat. Not only did the cartel want retribution for lost cocaine, but the Bulgarians demanded compensation as well. Gideon knew that if he or his men showed any weakness, the Terrible Jers would crumble, devoured by rival gangs or dismantled by the same foreign syndicates that dismantled Jaggers. A clandestine summit was organized in a grimy warehouse by the harbor, far from prying eyes. Gideon arrived flanked by a few loyalists, finding delegates from other 28 subsets, uneasy but intrigued. Over battered folding chairs, the men debated ceasefires, restitution, and the prospective fury of foreign criminals. One representative from the firm insisted that without cooperation, the entire 28 structure risked infiltration by foreign muscle. Another corner insisted that no peace could hold unless the Colombians and Bulgarians saw evidence of remorse or restitution. Hours passed with no formal agreement, though they tentatively pledged to share information if external threats escalated. Night fell on the city, thick with humidity. Container ships dotted the horizon, their lights bobbing like distant galaxies. Even as trafficking slowed for the moment, everyone suspected it was only a lull. Street-level dealers hawked smaller consignments, while kingpins negotiated hush-hush deals behind tall gates. Cargo continued flowing in and out of the bustling ports, a perpetual tide of commerce and contraband crossing the Atlantic. In the end, Jaggers' demise seemed less a resolution and more a warning shot to anyone else tempted by a double cross. Life in Cape Town marched forward as ever, with crowded taxis and daily wage earners trying to eke out a living. Yet, for those entangled in the underworld, a dark truth remained. Foreign syndicates had established an unshakable foothold, and they played by their own rules. If Jaggers' downfall taught them anything, it was that ambition untampered by caution might lead to a cold grave, miles from the sea on which all their fortunes once floated. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more thrilling content. Don't forget to hit the bell icon so you never miss an update. See you in the next one.